This is an Eyewitness News election update. I'm Mike Marza. A couple of big headlines today that we're following. First up, back from Albania and no longer in the running to lead the city of New York anymore. Mayor Adams today declined to say whether or not he's going to endorse a successor. But if he makes that determination, or when he makes that determination, he will. We'll follow that closely. Also out on the campaign trail, this overshadowing headline that we've been following over the last 24 hours. The candidates for New York mayor now weighing in on these new charges leveled against New York Attorney General Tish James. She's the second political figure in a span of just a couple of weeks to face prosecution after President Trump's public demand that the Justice Department move, quote, now to charge his political enemies. Joining me now to talk all about this is ABC News Deputy Political Director Ben Siegel. Ben, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So this can kind of get into the weeds, as our friend Bill Ritter likes to say. So let's break it down in sort of layperson terms. If you're just clicking through ABC7NY and you see this headline, what was Letitia James charged with? What is this about? I understand it's mortgage fraud, bank fraud. Detail exactly what she's facing.
So in short, she's being accused here by federal prosecutors of making false statements to a financial institution to receive a better loan, to receive a better interest rate, and then misstating the use of that property. And it's very similar. If it sounds familiar to New Yorkers, it's because it's almost strikingly similar to the civil fraud case that the Attorney General's office brought against Donald Trump in 2022 of accusing him basically of inflating his assets, including real estate, for favorable bank loans. So there are these striking parallels there in this case that's now been brought against her. But the big picture is it's incredibly rare for the federal government to bring these kinds of charges and ask a grand jury to indict someone over this. When we talk about, what kind of loan she was looking for in terms of the favorability, it's really only an $18,000 difference here potentially. And that was what prosecutors are saying, that it was really a very small amount of money at stake here. So that's just sort of the big picture look at it.
All right, so let's dive into the weeds in all of this, because the political undertone here is very clear. And you mentioned a little bit about the back and forth between Trump and James. A former prosecutor looked at this case before and said there's really no there, and they passed on it. However, a Trump-appointed attorney, a federal prosecutor named Lindsay Halligan, was put on the case, and she decided to move forward with this indictment. In fact, so much sort of intrigue about all of this is that even some of the DOJ, according to ABC News reporting, they were kind of caught off guard on the timing of this. Let's back it up even more, because Tish James, you mentioned the civil suit against President Trump, and back it up even before that, when Attorney General James was campaigning, she made going after Trump a large part of her campaign. In fact, she was calling him an illegitimate president way before that civil suit was brought. So the accusation from Republicans in particular, right, Ben, is that this is sort of a tit-for-tat situation where she was then elected saying she was going to go after President Trump. She was elected as AG. She went after President Trump, got that civil suit on her side. She got that judgment on her side, on New York's side. And then now that's tied up in the courts on whether or not he's going to have to pay a huge fine as a result of that. Then you fast forward to today, where now she is under indictment for what you mentioned is this bank situation. It's unprecedented. How dangerous, though, are we going down this road here of this sort of the lawsuits, the back and the forth? And it's hard for, I just think, the normal person to make sense of it all.
It's a really unprecedented path that we're on now. And, we heard for many years President Trump and Republicans say that this was lawfare being used against him. That was the term that they embraced, of Democratic elected officials like James using the apparatus of government to target a perceived political enemy. Of course, Trump was running for president at that time. But the investigation, the fraud case that James brought, was only after years and years of investigations. She came to office in 2018, and the charges were not brought until 2022. So this was a very meticulous process, definitely not separate from politics, for all the reasons we mentioned, but it was a process they followed. Here, what's so extraordinary is what you mentioned, that the president's, one of his former personal lawyers was put in this office in the Eastern District of Virginia as the U.S. attorney, because the person who was previously put in that role thought there was no case here. and also had concerns about the case that was brought in that same district by this same lawyer who used to practice insurance law before joining President Trump's team, regarding former FBI Director James Comey. So this is, what many people say is a tit for tat, and what Democrats today are saying is the weaponization of the justice system against President Trump's perceived political enemies. For Republicans, this is something that they see beginning a long time ago. So we'll see how this all plays out. She'll be in court later this month, and we see the process going, continuing against James Comey as well. But certainly this is the politicization on both sides. You're hearing these charges of the criminal justice system. There's no doubt about that.
All right, let's hear what AG James said as a result of this indictment.
These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. I'm a proud woman of faith, and I know that faith and fear cannot share the same space. And so today, I'm not fearful. I'm fearless. And as my faith teaches me, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. We will fight these baseless charges aggressively, and my office will continue to fiercely protect New Yorkers and their rights. And I will continue to do my job.
So a very dramatic statement there. It seems like both are kind of relishing in this moment of going toe-to-toe, President Trump and then AG James. And you saw her vehement denial there and saying that she's going to go after all of this. This now becoming a theme on the campaign trail for New York mayor. Let's talk about former Governor Cuomo, because he put out a social media post today, and we'll show it to you here. And Ben, I want to get your thoughts on this because other people weighed in as well. But Cuomo put out this sort of, some people were calling it vague, and here it is, and I'll read just a portion of it. In a democracy, the rule of law must be sacred, impartial, objective, and above politics, whether it comes from the right or the left, from prosecutors or politicians. The politicization of the law enforcement is dangerous and corrosive. And then he goes on to say other things. What you don't see there, you don't see President Trump's name, and you don't see AG James's name. Right. So he received criticism today, but this is now becoming a theme in the campaign for New York mayor. And I'll play a couple of clips from some of the other candidates in just a moment, including Cuomo reacting to all of this and the fallout from the social media post. But your thoughts now on this becoming, not just here in New York, but across the country. This is a talking point for what you just mentioned, right? Which is the federal government or courts in general being used to settle political differences. That's the accusation, at least.
Yeah, and I will say I covered President Trump's re-election campaign in 2024 all through the primary when he was dealing with these cases in court for a whole number of different issues. And one thing that really struck me was being an active candidate for office while these things were happening, it seemed to energize Americans. It seemed to energize some Republicans to circle the wagons and support President Trump, almost irrespective of the charges and the actual legal case itself. And you're almost starting to see that happen in New York. You mentioned those other Democrats who are rallying around James. And it does raise this interesting point of this confluence of politics and the law, and it almost creates this political issue that's really separate from the actual charges at the heart of the case here. So it's just been fascinating to see that, and also the dynamics between all these figures in New York. Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, has been around a long time, and obviously he has some bad blood there with Letitia James. That's why her name is not in that statement, as you noted.
And that was something that Zohran Mamdani pointed out today. Let's listen.
I run against a disgraced former governor who in this moment has chosen to issue a statement within which he cannot even say the name Tish James, nor the name of Donald Trump. And we know why. Why? Because his narrow path to City Hall is paved by the very billionaires who put Donald Trump back in the White House. Sure. And he cannot speak his name lest he has permission already to do so.
Now let's go to what the Republican in this race said about all of this. Curtis Sliwa reacting to the indictment of a...
We all sat through when Citizen Trump, who was running for re-election, became the victim of lawfare by Tish James, who was over the top as Attorney General. But maybe this should be a signal that all of these cross indictments, and lawfare situations, depending on what side of the political parameter you are, need to come to an end. Or we're never going to get anything done in this country. It's going to be bitter, partisan disputes.
Curtis Sliwa there. Ben, do you think the average New Yorker cares about this to the degree that we are here talking about this and cable news and social media? I mean, the issues that we've been following, certainly here in New York, and one of the main reasons why Zohran Mamdani has soared to the top of the polls is rent is too high. How am I going to get the kids to get through school, and how am I going to pay for food? Is this an issue that you think is really going to be a driving force as we close in now and just weeks to go?
I mean, it's hard to imagine this trumping those issues of affordability that you talk about. I mean, I think what is notable is that President Trump has made these threats to essentially target New York City to a greater extent than he already has if Zohran Mamdani wins the mayoral race and becomes the next occupant of Gracie Mansion, just because of his politics, of his vision for the city. That's something that President Trump sees as a useful foil. So to the extent that this matters in the race, I think it really maybe strikes at the pride of New Yorkers who are Democrats, who bristle at the idea of the president vindictively targeting New York City for political reasons, potentially withholding resources. So in the sense that this animates people, I feel like it will animate people. But in terms of whether or not it impacts their everyday life, I think that, to your point, those other issues, the affordability, education, rent, all those things are going to loom much larger for voters.
And former Governor Cuomo has been accused of being close to President Trump, and some people have accused him of sort of being part of this whole political dynamic or calculation from the president to get Mamdani out of the way to have Cuomo rise to the mayorship here in New York. Cuomo spoke this morning on radio. This was before Mamdani reacted to the Cuomo social media post. I know it's hard to keep track of all of this, but let's play what Cuomo said about his relationship with President Trump.
The relationship is on full display for people to see, right? What he's doing with this race, I think, is he's offering his analysis. And I think his analysis is what the polls say. He's saying that Curtis cannot win. I think Curtis knows that. I think everybody knows that. And he's saying he thinks if you vote for Curtis, you're really voting for Mamdani. And he thinks that I have the best shot against Mamdani, which is what every poll says.
So as we close in now on November 4th, and all these candidates now are trying to figure out how do they position themselves best to go after Zohran Mamdani, especially with Mayor Adams out of the race. What are the key things you're going to be looking for? Perhaps this is one of them, this indictment with A.G. James. But what is one of the, or a few of the key things that you'll be looking and watching for as we close in on the last few days of this race?
I think it's really interesting to see where these candidates go in the final weeks of this race. Their time and their energy are the biggest currencies they have, as we get closer to Election Day. So which kinds of New Yorkers are they meeting with? Where are they going? How many events are they having? Are they trying to reach out to groups that maybe they did not perform well with in the primaries? Or are they trying to build their coalition? Are they going to areas where other candidates performed better? I think those are all very interesting things to watch. We've seen Mamdani make his way around the different areas of New York's Jewish community, reaching out to groups around the high holidays to try to solidify his standing with the group of some voters who have been skeptical of him. And we've seen Cuomo with different trade groups across the 5 boroughs and try to consolidate that blue-collar electorate that he does well with, but that also Mayor Eric Adams performed well with. So I think those are the 2 things to watch. And also the big thing, mentioning Adams, is will he come out and formally endorse Cuomo and try to further consolidate, that side of the electorate so that this can become more of that, one-on-one race that Cuomo was alluding to and that clearly President Trump is alluding to as well.
Yeah, and the recent poll that just came out, I believe it was yesterday, actually showed a tightening of the race, and you got to figure a lot of the Mayor Adams support, a few of Mayor Adams' supporters, even though he was polling in single digits, went over to the Cuomo side. So that's a great point. We'll see how it all shakes out as we approach Election Day. Ben, thanks so much for your perspective. We always appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I'm Mike Marza. You can get full coverage of all the big races ahead of Election Day right now at ABC7 NY. Have a great day.